Sydney, what's your star sign?
I am an adult.
And that's Sydney's answer whenever we ask him.
Hi everyone, my name is Brisa Areli Muñoz, and I am the Director of Artistic Innovation and Emergent Magic at MTF. MTF equips artists to create musical stories as a collective force for justice, healing, and radical imagination. And I am joined by the fellow members of Artistic Circle at MTF, Sidney Erik Wright and Brandon Powers. And we're really excited to frame for you what this Fast Forward program is and have you learn a little bit about them and their roles at the organization. So let's start with you, Sidney. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at MTF currently, but also who you are as an artist in the world?
Hi everyone, I'm Sidney Erik Wright. I am Artistic Programs Lead at Musical Theater Factory, and that means that I kind of supervise a lot of the different programs that we have going on and keep my hands and make sure that things are running smoothly and problem solving and making things functional. As far as me as an artist, I came to New York 18 years ago as a performer. Started learning by doing. So I did not come through a traditional conservatory background. I just was I love theater, I want to do theater, and so I'm going to take classes and find my way. And so I came up in the ranks of dancing at Broadway Dance Center and steps, taking from the people who became this generation of iconic choreographers. So Annie Blankenbuehler and Josh Bergasse, and started as a musical theater ensemblist, primarily dance forward. And then I hit a period where I wasn't really booking. And I always knew I wanted to go into a creative direction, but the established pipeline is that you're a performer, and then you're assistant, and then you're associate, and then you get to be a choreographer. And I was well, if you're not getting hired, then you can't really go that route. Yeah. So I started creating my own work instead. And I kind of created my own program of evolving from doing a duet to doing a 4-person dance, to doing an 8-person dance, and just kind of gave myself progressive challenges to build up. And then I had an iconic SDC observership, which shout out to the SDC Foundation. They do great work. But I was brought on to be a directing observer and realized that I'm not a choreographer, I'm a director choreographer. And so that was a really pivotal career shift. And from there, I started thinking of myself in that way and started challenging myself to do plays and musicals. And so I've worked as a choreographer on plays, I've worked on directors on musicals I haven't choreographed. Essentially, I believe that theater is messy and embracing the hybridization of it. I really vibe with theater that doesn't necessarily feel like theater, of things that take place at events or things that take place at bars, or musicals that feel more like plays or plays that feel more like musicals. And so just finding the blurring of hybrid and the blurring of lines, I think that's the really juicy, messy, uncategorical work that gets me excited. My choreographic icon is Jerome Robbins, specifically because I love Fosse. Fosse is wonderful, we snaps, but Fosse feels like Fosse, whereas Jerome Robbins reinvents the vocabulary fundamentally. The same person did Peter Pan and Fiddler on the Roof and West Side Story. And so I very much believe in the right tool for the right piece, and that the piece dictates the way that you share it with the world. And so that's kind of the overall aesthetic that I approach work with.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel like I learned so much about you even just asking you this way. Thanks, Sidney. Let's learn a little bit more about you.
Sure.
Brandon.
Or do you want to tell us about how long you've been hanging out here at MTF? I feel like that's important.
So they're dragging me because I do have seniority.
It is true.
It's true.
I don't want it to sound like I have total seniority in my story, so. Yeah.
So I walked in the door on the opening night party of Musical Theater Factory, where I ran into a friend, Freddie Kimmel, who is a performer, and he was like, oh, there's this really amazing organization that's starting and you should show up. And so I came in, and it was at a porn studio, and I looked around and saw all the really exciting up-and-coming musical theater folk in the city at that time. And it's this is where cool things are happening. And so the original organization started as a volunteer-based organization. And so I would be taking tickets or checking people in or selling concessions at the door. And so from the first day of Musical Theater Factory, I started as a volunteer, and my role has evolved and grown and shifted over the many years since then. But yes, I am OG.
I
Absolutely.
love it. Okay, Brandon, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's great to meet you. High fence. And yeah, I'm Brandon. I'm a director, choreographer, and technology translator. It's a new term I'm starting to use. And I love creating work at this intersection of performance and technology, and also building these bridges between artists and tech, and finding ways for people to begin to learn how to speak each other's languages in this way, so that we can kind of create more exciting, immersive work. My background comes from the musical theater, modern dance. Actually, originally started dancing as a hip hop dancer, and merging then eventually together with immersive dance and immersive theater, and then the technology things came over a period of time as I was going from making work about technology to then incorporating it into the work itself. And I am inspired by and love so many different things. I'm an extremely online person. And so I'm obsessed with the internet and internet culture, and video game culture, and kind of how we tell stories online. I'm also, really obsessed with like theme park rides. And as a kid, I was telling this to some artists earlier today I was working with, who I was like, yeah, I love theme park rides, and I loved magic as a kid, and like here I am now. It kind of makes a lot of sense. And here at MTF, I am our artistic innovation lead, which really allows me to do all of these things all together and support our artists in finding ways to kind of expand the possibilities of their creative practice. I'm, in many ways like an on-staff, like technological or like innovation dramaturg in some ways, where people can come to me where they're beginning to ask some questions about how they can, push their creative practice, whether it be with tech or form in some capacity. And, I help them through that and bring in my own experience working across all these different fields for a very long time to help bring them into the fold and show them that the skills that they have as artists actually already is perfect for these new skills they're looking to acquire. It's already within them, and we're here to help unlock that for them. And that really specifically often has me leading kind of a subset of our work that we call MTFXR, which is focused specifically on this immersive technology and musical storytelling overlap, which is something we've been doing for about 6 years now, which is amazing. And we really are the only organization in America that is supporting this intersection. So it's really, we feel like it's really important. And I feel like I get to support artists and lead a program that I would want as an artist working in this space. And so that's what I feel like I get to bring to the table.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Ardai Knox, and I am co-executive director of Musical Theater Factory, specifically the director of decolonization and sustainability. And I am coming at you to remind you to subscribe to The Vibe. The Vibe is to get all of the information you could possibly desire about the Musical Theater Factory community. We let you know what our artists are doing in the world. We let you know what they're doing in our home, in our community base, and it has lots of tips and tricks and links to help you further your career, whether you're a director, an actor, a writer, or just an audience member who wants to stay plugged in. If you want to be tapped into all things amazing in New York, especially within NTF, subscribe to The Vibe.
It's a real privilege to be working alongside you all, particularly because you all have a rich history with the factory. I've been around 4 years now, which is a little wild to say. But you all have been here longer. Sidney, you acknowledged you were OG. Brandon, you came
I'm
after
now like
that.
10 years.
There
yeah.
we go.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to just hear from y'all's perspective. You have so much factory history. Can you tell us about what it felt like then, the like dynamic work that you all did together at the factory, and what are some of those seedlings that still feel alive and present today? curious, either of you.
Yeah, when Sidney and I really got even more deeper involved in the organization, it was under this umbrella that we created along with another artist, Michael Bello, who's a director, that was called the Director Choreographer Coalition, because at the time, the main focus and really only focus of MTF was very specifically on like writers and like thinking of that word in a very like traditional sense, and there were like work groups for writers and that was it. And we were coming in and saying, hey, there's other artists that are part of the collaborative act of theater making.
Yeah.
And they're also looking for opportunity, and especially directors and choreographers. And I think we both really believe that directors and choreographers and other members of a creative team are also creators. They're makers, which is, I think, a big influence on why now our like residency program is called Makers and not the Writers Group anymore. Because several years ago when we made that change, it felt really important to us and then the rest of the staff that we want to embrace all aspects of, making a new work. And so I think those early conversations and ethos kind of have continued to trickle through the rest of the organization. And we've, produced a lot of really cool, like one-off events that bring a lot of people together. I think a lot of what we were doing early on and are still really passionate about is like, how do we just bring artists together, give them an opportunity to create, and let it go? Because that actually is very rare in this, like artist ecosystem right now. And where you can just let artists go and trust them to fail and try something new. So I feel like that was a big hallmark of what we started at, and that's just only transformed into all these new programming that we have.
And I'll highlight and double tap that and yes and that. I think that there was this phase where it was shifted from writers to segmenting into lots of different artistic disciplines. There was an actor coalition, there was a writer, there was a director choreographer coalition. It feels like the producers cohort is a natural outgrowth of that idea, of that all of these different disciplines have very specific needs to serve. But in addition to that, I think that the programming that we did with the Director Choreographer Coalition was the recognition that being an art maker in general exists beyond the specific piece that you're working on. That there's so many things that satisfy a life in the theater, that satisfy a career in the theater, whether it's networking and collaboration, whether that's education, whether it's just getting your hands messy and doing something. And so like that recognition that it's not what necessarily serves the piece, it's what serves the larger artist as a whole has also really trickled down into the evolution of Musical Theater Factory programming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many opportunities that I get to learn about how some of the ideas that we're generating have always kind of been in the DNA of this place. And I think that in that way, it feels like the brand or the vibe is really strong here at MTF. Folks have always been trying to push the envelope, trying to be radical, trying to be innovative about form, trying to push boundaries. And I'm so excited that together as an entire team, we've kind of really zoomed in on helping folks create musical stories. We even expanded from the definition of just musical theater, but to recognize that like music can serve the purpose of not just the final product that looks like a musical theater piece, but actually there's so many functions that music can play. And I was so excited that we became more expansive in that way, and that we ultimately found ourselves settling on these words of justice, healing, and radical imagination. We've gotten some time to build our own rapport as an artistic circle and make decisions collectively about the ways in which we can serve artists. And we had the privilege of being a part of a strategic planning process that our dear Director of Interdependence and Collective Care, Abigail Grubb, who you met in the previous episode, helped facilitate for us. And it felt like a really beautiful moment to take, what was 11 years of history and trying to distill it and make meaning of what are the things that we wanted to keep from the very beginning and what are the ways that we were evolving. And I want to take this kind of umbrella language that we've now been using to kind of frame all of our programs of this like three-pronged approach of the artist, the work, and the world. I want to take an opportunity to articulate what this framework, the artist, the work in the world, means for me. And I'm curious to hear y'all's reflections on it as well. I think when we were talking about the artist, we were thinking about what are the ways that we could be thinking about an artist's holistic needs, and that it was not just about the work that they produced, but how are we creating the container for them to be able to have everything that they need to succeed. And sometimes that might look like, transportation costs, because sometimes you just need to be able to like get where you're going to create the work, or thinking long term about the desire to be providing stipends for healthcare, and all these sort of external factors that sometimes stop artists from making became something that I know was really important to us. And then there was the work itself and the bite-sized programs that we'll kind of articulate in a moment that we're providing for folks. And then there was the world, right, which is the impact that our work in supporting artists in their development could have for the entire ecosystem, for the entire field. I'm curious to hear from you all what of those things are really exciting for you sitting in this unique role of, being an artistic circle member.
Yeah, I think that it came down to, like two really main shifts for us that I think are really impactful. One is this idea of just like trusting artists with what, asking them what they want, and then doing your best to give it to them, and yes, ask them questions about it and try to support them in deepening their questions and what they need. But, if an artist needs childcare so they can go to rehearsal, like that childcare is part of their artist practice, right? And that it feels so strange when you take a step back and realize that in this country, those types of conversations are just like not had at all on the nonprofit, theatrical level, right? Because of the world of restricted funds and all the kind of tape you have to move through, right? So I think that was really exciting for us to have a really big conversation about constantly throughout that strategic plan. And it's, I think, resonant in this new model. And also, this just greater idea of ecosystem, right? That we are not going in this kind of linear pathway, right? The main center of MTF was this assembly line, right? That was like the engine. There was a clear engine of the way we did work here, and you went from one program to the next, and it was intended to be like a factory, because that was, in the ideas of like the like Marxist roots of the organization, and to shift from that thinking to this more radial ecosystem where there's kind of blurriness and everything is feeding each other and it's much more abundant, just feels so much more reflective of the world we're in right now and like what the world needs right now. And I think this, triad model represents that really well, so that we can continue to feel like we're, nurturing this tree, and then that even bled its way into the conversation we had about like our logo design, right? Because it was like, oh, it feels like it's echoing out. It's like it rings. It's
like sound waves.
It's sound. It's also
like
rings of a tree.
Yeah.
It's also water. All those things at the same time.
Yeah.
For me, it really comes down to the idea of impact. Of like the sound waves, like how do you go out? Who's hearing you? If you do theater and nobody sees it, did you like really do theater? And so like there's so much of like, we do this because it is kind of a artistic practice and a spiritual practice and a calling as artists, but how do you reach the audiences you're trying to reach is kind of the big important thing. And so we can't let ourselves think like just product, what is the thing you're writing, because so much of it is making sure that it's received and it's reaching people. And so like this idea of like the world is super important as a piece of a larger puzzle to make sure that the work is the work you're trying to do, because if it's not heard, then what are you doing?
Yeah. That made me think. I was talking with my current roommate, who's a dramaturg as well. His name is James Montaño. And he's someone who is getting his PhD currently and is studying nonprofit governance. And when I was explaining MTF's new strategic plan, he was saying, I don't know that I've really heard of people that are really putting their energy towards like audience as community. Like, who are the communities that you need to make sure receive this work, and how can you create avenues for the work to go directly to them as opposed to the pipeline that, is, seemingly hierarchical. Broadway or off Broadway is the sort of only places that these places can live. And that's something that, when we think about the component of the world that I got really excited about, we were witnessing artists who had very specific intentions to bring their work to very specific communities.
And it's a reciprocal relationship because like the communities that you're speaking to are also speaking to you. We're having this podcast dialogue because we're putting this out to people who get it, who are really like aware of what's happening in the industry and are hopefully able to like engage with it. And so like the way that we're thinking of our community is framing the conversation that we're having.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a moment because we're here together to also outline the different programs that have evolved at MTF and what they entail to then get us towards how we came to Fast Forward as a program. So we have what we call our R&D suite of services. That's research and dramaturgy. And so many of these felt like they were kernels and remnants and pieces of the original factory, but have just been renamed and revamped and reframed for today. So we have things like our groundwork, which could be seen as an evolution of our roundtables, which were our writers groups, but also you facilitated a program called Co-Working on It at some point. And it's an opportunity for artists at the ground level to build community just by being in shared space, either virtual or in person, to just co-work together and hold each other accountable to that work. This directly feeds into a program that we call Hot Mic Night, which might feel similar to what folks knew of as a salon, which is an opportunity to test out brand new work. And so Groundwork and Hot Mic are programs that are in relationship to each other. And if you attend Groundwork sessions, you get the opportunity to sign up to get paid to have a slot at Hot Mic Night to share your work. But then we also have other elements of the R&D process, things like a Generate, which is just paid writing time, which we know artists just need in the world. We've got Pulse Points, which is the opportunity to share out into the world what you're working on. That could be a cold read, that could be a concert, that could be a workshop. And then we finally have Realms of Innovation, which is the opportunity to experiment, which is, I think, the thing you were saying earlier, Brandon, that not a lot of spaces pay for artists to try out an idea that isn't already clear in their mind, that we allow artists to show up with a question and then examine whether or not, the answer gave them what they thought it might, or whether it sends their piece in an entirely different direction. And so these are all elements of our R&D suite. And then we had community programs, ones where we were really looking at what's the impact that we could be having on the field. And one of these programs is called Story of the Night, and it's an opportunity to bring indie musicians into the fold. This is folks for whom have always been curious in narrative storytelling, but perhaps they've been independent musicians and they've created a concept album, or they've always wanted to understand what it means to cross form. And we've seen, even at the highest commercial levels, that there are many independent musicians that are making the crossover into musical storytelling. And so we thought, amazing, how do we create that avenue to provide support for them to do so? And that felt really field shifting because we were now all of a sudden bringing musicians into the fold and also giving our musical theater creators the opportunity to learn from them and how they do gig work and how economic justice is cultivated, through the ways that, their field is structured or organized. And then this leads us to Fast Forward, which is this podcast that we have here. And it's an opportunity to understand the function that artists can play in society across every sector and not just within our own little theater bubble, which I think we see a lot. So I'm curious, Brendan, we have a little bit of shared history in that you went to Northwestern. You studied under Michael Road, who's also someone who's a dear friend and collaborator of mine. So you were tapped in to kind of devise works, and you were tapped into the function that art could play outside of just our little bubble. I'm curious just to hear a little bit about your history with that work of blending form but also crossing sector.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's a big root of my like coming of age as an artist, I would say, and really impactful, and working with Michael, and, you know, understanding how we can create work that is like transformative. I think that's a big part of my education, both transformative in terms of like transforming culture with Michael, and then also like transforming space in my work with like David Catlin from like Looking Glass Theater. I feel like that was the kind of story of my time. And I think that, you know, it's been really exciting that we now get to bring this work here and deepen it together here at MTF, because it's just feels like there's always been this feeling that, you know, we need to find ways for the arts to do what I believe they are intended to do, right? And that is to help support the like betterment of society at large, right? And that it's not just pure entertainment. You know, it can be, and that's important as well, but we also have the opportunity to shift ideas, you know, and that can go beyond just, oh, this is a musical about this theme, and therefore you might think about it differently on the way out. But how can we really create action inside the works? You know, like one of those projects I worked on with Michael involved us in the audience all voting on where the ticket sales from that performance were going to go to help solve poverty in Chicago, right? And like literally the last moment of the show was everyone voting, and then like me writing a check on stage and walking out of the theater with it, you know? And so I think that was a really powerful moment, and I think I'm always trying to find more ways to bring that into what we're doing now, and it feels really important given the state of the world that artists kind of take that step up. And I feel really passionate that the rest of culture listens to us. But then we also need to do a better job standing up for ourselves, you know, and showing people like we have so many skills that are so important to making the world run smoothly, you know, and like we are really well trained in communication, you know, we're really well trained in problem solving. The fact that, you know, you're a choreographer means that you understand how to move people through space. It isn't just like means you know how to do a gesture, you know? So I feel like what we're doing now at MTF is both telling the world about this and so that folks can listen, but I think also really empowering our artist community to understand that, hey, there's so much you can do to impact all these different sectors.
And what I've found so interesting is that our artists have been tapped in to that understanding. I feel like it was like our curiosities were like holding hands with the projects that our artists were bringing forth. And I think that that's what helped to solidify what our mission was, because I will tell you, I have many experiences where I'm working as a lecturer or a teacher in different institutional settings, and I see these students, they leave their BFAs in acting and directing, and then when they don't immediately get, you know, the gig, you know, all of a sudden they feel like they have to leave the sector entirely, and now all of a sudden they're doing something entirely different because they think that all of a sudden they have to just abandon everything that they learned, as opposed to recognizing that actually those skills are valuable skills that can be employed everywhere, you know, and we just need to think creatively, which is the thing that we do best, about how that might be so. And yes, we do kind of have to carve our way in, and that's what I've witnessed, you know, so many of our artists doing, you know, is being very clear about the ways in which they want their piece to support justice or healing or transformation in their communities. And so that's what's felt like a real gift, is that, you know, we have this expertise under our belt, but our artists do too. And for the folks who don't, they are curious to like lean into what that would mean for their work. And I'm curious, Sidney, you know, to hear from you, like what feels excited about this exploration that we're doing by bridging artists and other sectors.
I mean, everyone around this table, literal table, everyone here has really made a career out of breaking genre and finding ways of like, how do you blend different forms? And so it doesn't feel like it's anything new for us because we do it all the time. And I feel like many people in the industry hit with a certain brand, and then they are trapped by that brand, and they replicate the same kind of brand over and over and over. And there's this mentality in theater that like you are the piece or you are the project, instead of thinking like, no, you are a creator, and that extends beyond lots of different realms. And so I think that we're very, very aware theater does not just take place in theaters, it takes place everywhere. And whether that's a video game or whether that's on camera, we did a lot of series like dance on camera videos. And so I think that when there's a door that's closed, you open a window. And so many artists are finding ways to do that, but they're all doing it in isolation. And I think that we're trying to create this like meeting place where people who are doing things in specific fields can come and share knowledge, and then that can help expand the reach for everyone.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you don't know. And so just having the consciousness raising of what is someone doing that you're interested in and what is now possible for you in that world. And so thinking of cross-sectorally, there are so many different sectors. And so we're just going to keep on mining and figuring out to uplift artists and non-artists who are working together to see like how do the skills of being a theater maker extend beyond the realm of like one specific piece and open up entirely different worlds that you never even considered.
Yes.
And that I think is a big, it is that is ultimately where we lead to Fast Forward, right? As a program, is that there are already so many artists doing the work, right? And we want to do what we can to support them and platform them.
Yes.
And have conversations around them and around their work they're doing. So then hopefully other people can learn about how to get involved in that sort of work, how we can learn. I feel like we're choosing topics based on places we want to grow in as an organization. To then ultimately, have an event where we're having multiple people from a sector come together from different angles next to artists. I think it's a little bit of like a moment of model society for us.
Yeah.
So that we can get in there and it's not just like a panel.
Yeah.
It's actually like a forum for people to get messy and try to figure some stuff out.
Yeah. And I think to like simplify it all, what are the key ingredients here? So each season we will identify 2 themes, 2 sectors. And we will get an opportunity to take a case study from each sector of an artist who's excavating the intersection of that sector with their own practice. And so this season, we've kicked off this inaugural Fast Forward program with 2 different sectors: the health and wellness sector and the technology sector. And so throughout the course of this Fast Forward podcast, what you're going to experience is us getting a chance to interview these case studies and the creators of these projects. And then we'll get an opportunity to have a live discourse with audiences where we will invite experts from across the sector we're examining to be in conversation with the artist and with us about their project. Something that's really important for us is to really try and find a way for this conversation to translate into actionable strategies or questions that we're still interrogating that we need your support to untangle and learn more about. And we're so excited to introduce this podcast format also as an opportunity to share back our learnings, what we're excited about, what questions now have emerged because we've started this, and what ecosystem we can create, what container we can create for this communities to start meeting on a regular basis so that we no longer have to, maintain these silos and rather think about ourselves as an interconnected ecosystem that can allow major change to happen.
And I'll chime in that this is your invitation to join this community, that like we want you in this dialogue. And so whether that's attending Fast Forwards in person, whether that's commenting in the boxes, whether that's liking and subscribing, like please, we want to hear from you what your curiosities are, what your responses to these conversations are.
Yes. I'm really grateful to be doing this work alongside both of you, and we're really excited to showcase with you all the things that we learned throughout the course of the season. And we hope you stay tuned and see what we're up to. The first one we have up is the health and wellness sector, where we're going to be unpacking a case study called Mercedes that's created by Modesto Flaco Jimenez, and we'll be bringing healthcare workers, physicians, arts therapists into the conversation to talk about the real impact that this project has had on the field and the questions that are arising that still are left to be answered. So thank you so much for taking some time to introduce yourself. Really grateful for you both. And stay tuned for more from us at MTF.
Hey there, it's Areli Knox, Co-Executive Director of Musical Theater Factory, specifically Director of Decolonization and Sustainability, and I am here to remind you that if anyone's got us, we got us. In this time of chaos and insanity, invest in the community that is investing in you. Invest in the We Got Us Fund, a new initiative by MTF to make sure that every single member of our community is not getting paid just a living wage, is not getting paid in exposure, is not getting paid in promises, but it's getting paid a thriving wage. Yeah, you heard me, a thriving wage. Help us ensure that everyone in your community, everyone in our community is able to not just live, but thrive. Invest in the We Got Us Fund today.
Let's just take a moment to share if you'd like folks to follow more of your work or who you are. Where can they find you?
Easiest way to keep tabs on what I'm doing is my website, www.sidneyerik.com. I will say that that's Sydney with an I, not Sydney with a Y, because Sydney with a Y is not this guy.
I like that.
That is good.
Also, it's an Eric with a K, not Eric with a C, because Eric with a C is just not me. It's K instead of C, I instead of Y. That's how you can find me, www.sidneyerik.com, and my Instagram is just at Sidney Erik.
I love that. Thank you.
Wow,
Brandon?
I don't have a jingle. Brandon-powers.com and at bpow33, which is the most eloquent username on IG. And then if you want to get into some more wild stuff, you can find me on TikTok, and I'm Brandon_Powers. That sounds weird. Not like that. I also do a lot on TikTok, but I feel like I kind of have a different identity on TikTok, which is fun. And so I do talk a little bit more about theater, and I think of the work that we're doing kind of there. So that's Brandon_Powers.
Yes, and you can find me at brisaareli.com or at Brisa Areli on Instagram or mtf.nyc or at MTF Musicals.
Hey everyone, I'm Fallon, and thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Fast Forward. I am on the MTF staff as the coordinator of connectivity and systems. And if you want to stay tuned in, please like, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss future episodes, upcoming releases, and live tapings. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, fine. You are an adult, then just tell us your birthday.
Okay, so I'm July 30th, and so allegedly, what does that say about me as a Leo?
This checks out, actually. A Leo, also a fire, so you all share fire signs, and
But we would need the rest of the information.
Yeah, the chart, exactly, in order to
So
balance
we'll
each
need your
other
birth
out.
time.
That's right.